recorded and will be published in our Catalyst 2030 webpage for your further consult. Please feel free to use the chat box any minute. And after the session, we will be sending you, as the participants, a feedback form for you to give us feedback on this roundtable. So once again, welcome to this session, and I'll hand over to Alicia London.
Thank you so much, and it's great to be here and to meet you all, dialing in from around the world. I thought it might be nice, actually, if you, let's put, if we rename our titles. I'm just going to put at the end where I'm joining from, so I put little brackets in. My surname is London, and I'm dialing in from London. If you want to just adapt yours, you can click on the 3 dots and rename, just to put where you're dialing in from. That'd be lovely. But welcome. I was really pleased to be invited to join this session with you, and we've got a couple of speakers speaking today. So the background here, this is the second round of the Catalyzing Change campaign, and the second in a series, which will now until July, which will result in a report for the high-level forum. And I'm sure you've all got that details for the plan. So today's quite practical. So what we've been asked to do, we'll do introductions shortly. What we've been asked to do, originally we're actually asked to come up with some policy recommendations for mental health globally. However, having some discussions with other speakers here, particularly Helen and others, there actually have been, from across the global mental health community, global policy recommendations drafted and shared by the UN Secretary General just last week. And so we're keen not to rewrite all that work that's already been done in that forum, rather look at how do you move what we know needs to happen on mental health into getting it into place. And so we're going to have a slightly different focus here. At the end of the session, we'll need some volunteers to help put their hand up to come up with a short summary of our discussions as well to go into that report. So hopefully we get some volunteers. If not, we may call on you. So fair warning. Just as a little bit of background, my name's Alicia. I am the founder and CEO of United for Global Mental Health. We were set up 2 years ago as a global advocacy campaigning, financing body for mental health. I was really shocked to discover there wasn't a general kind of body like that. And so it's been a real joy working with a really wide global community over the last few years. Can I please ask our speakers, we've got 3 speakers joining us today, to introduce yourself. Helen first.
Right, thanks Alicia. I'm Helen Mason, and I'm the Director of Operations at Child Helpline International here in Amsterdam. We are the global network of child helplines, and we work in 142 countries. And it's a pleasure to be here today and also to see some familiar faces. I'm really delighted that 2 of our members, our Child Helpline members, could join today. So over to you, Aggie from Smile of the Child Greece, and then over to you, Rati from Childline Zimbabwe. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon. It's afternoon here. So good afternoon to everyone. I'm Aggie. I'm a psychologist from the Smile of the Child, and I'm a line supervisor on the 3 lines we're running in Greece. So I'm into child protection and mental health. Okay.
My name is Rati Moyo. I'm from Childline Zimbabwe. Yeah, happy to join you.
Right, welcome.
Well, welcome. So as I said, I think we're just on time, which is great. We should have a good amount of time here. Just to recoup, we've got the chance now to have a look at the recommendations that are out there if you haven't seen them. And then really we'll have some discussions. We'll hear from a couple of our speakers first, and then some discussion around how we can ensure these are actually implemented, which seems to be the highest priority order at this point. To kick us off, I'm just going to put into the chat here, just like a show of hands, if you've seen the global policy brief recommendations that the UN Secretary General himself put out just over 10 days ago. A show of hands if you've seen it. A couple. Okay, cool. So I put it, a few more. I put it in the Slack here, into the chat, so you can see a link there, and I'll just quickly go through them. But we will might just kick off with a video. This video, the Secretary General's office asked us to help bring together civil society voices from around the world. Not only did we work with a range of others and experts to develop this briefing, but also then helped to launch it with the real stories. And it was, I actually, from a personal point of view, was so pleased when they did it, because they have been putting out a series of policy recommendations for all countries. And this was the first one that they did with civil society voices. The Secretary General himself actually spoke to a couple of advocates, a frontline health worker from Pakistan and an advocate from South Africa. And they've really worked to make sure that this is prioritized and got that extra cut through, which is really important. I'm really pleased to see. So, okay, so I've just got a note to say we're going to skip the group discussions and have one together. So we'll be able to discuss together. So, okay, but if we could please, Susanna, play that here.
Sure.
Our world was not set up to respond to the growing mental health crisis before COVID-19, and it certainly isn't now. That's why we, as part of the Speak Your Mind campaign, have joined together with over 200 inspirational leaders from across 40 countries so far. Together we have released an open letter calling on all world leaders to protect and scale mental health support within COVID-19 responses, both now and for the future. The UN policy briefing provides essential recommendations that urgently need to be implemented both locally and nationally.
If I'm not psychologically well, I won't be able to take care of my patient. We want our government and healthcare institutions to provide hotline numbers and professional psychological support to the frontline healthcare workers.
With schools closed and sheltering in place, we have seen a significant increase in children calling helplines. Many children are living with their abusers, unable to escape. To prevent children's mental health from becoming the biggest casualty of the COVID pandemic, we must focus on child safety and well-being.
We provide weekly training to first responders, humanitarian workers, teachers, and those in the front line who are most likely to be approached by the most vulnerable in their times of greatest distress. Secondly, we developed a teletherapy platform that allows us to reach people in internally displaced camps, families, as well as women suffering from domestic violence.
We have been seeing the impact of COVID, a rise in anxiety. The quarantines have caused a rise in domestic violence and sexual abuse, and now we're seeing an increase in grief and job loss, leading to financial stress and depression.
Just a brief summary, there's a brief summary of the recommendations there, but just to give a really short overview, there were 3 very high level recommendations, and you can see in the policy brief covering a lot more areas. But firstly, applying a whole of society approach to promote, protect and care for mental health, really making sure that mental health is incorporated as an essential part of response plans now, including communication support. Secondly, ensuring widespread availability of emergency mental health and psychosocial support, especially for the most vulnerable. So there's been a lot of urgent needs for those in crisis situations, those most of impact, the elderly, for children as well, and promoting and protecting human rights within that. And then thirdly, supporting recovery from COVID by building a stronger mental health support for the future. So this is kind of both the immediate, but also the Build Back Better message. These were developed, as I said, and launched with UN and global civil society together. Certainly from my point of view, there's a couple of urgent needs which would love us to talk through and would love your thoughts on. I think the first one is, obviously governments have so much to focus on at the moment. Having a strong voice from civil society is really important now, and that prioritization, and that's historically been really tough on mental health for a whole range of reasons, and something that is growing. But there's a question around how we bring that accountability to leaders in a more united and a stronger way together. Certainly for funding. So we're starting to see pieces of mental health support in some countries be scaled up, but it is quite isolated. So whether that's from governments themselves, and the Australian government, did put a funding package alongside their response. We're not really seeing that across the board, but also businesses and philanthropy. And so how do we accelerate the financing support that's available? Making sure that human rights are protected within this. Some of the stories we've heard from countries around the world are quite worrying around, and there's potential for backtracking on progress made on the rights of those with mental health conditions. And one of the biggest ones I'm sure so many of you are concerned about, we certainly see this, is just the capacity of civil society to meet the gap that exists. We can say these things are all needed, and I'd love to hear if anyone thinks that they aren't, quite genuinely, or they should be quite different. But what we do know is the capacity of civil society globally to meet this need is really being challenged. We've spoken to campaigners and civil society providers from Tonga to Kenya to the US, all over the world, capacity is there, being challenged. So with that, I'd love to hand over to Helen to give us a few of your thoughts before we, and also with your colleagues, Raki and Aggie, before we jump into a more kind of open conversation together.
Great, thanks so much, Alicia, for this excellent introduction and for setting the scene for us. I'm so happy that Catalyzing Change has brought us together, actually. I think that there's a lot we can do together, and I think that from our perspective as the global network of child helplines, we would echo and testify to a lot of what you've said, Alicia. Obviously, as a network of child helplines, we are focused on children and young people. So most child helplines are targeting young people up to age 25, but primarily targeting the teenage age group from 13 to 18 years old. So great film, by the way, Alicia. I really got a lot out of that film, and I think it really is a really useful piece of advocacy. So thank you for that. Of course, we recognize that mental health has been affected by COVID-19 everywhere, and particularly the impact on youth has been well documented. Members can testify to this, that around 1 in 4 of contacts to child helplines at the moment are related to a mental health issue. And added to that, we see an increase in contacts to child helplines globally from anywhere to 20 to 50%. So the demand for child helpline counselling and child helpline services is growing at quite a rate, which is a difficult situation made worse by the fact that many child helplines are struggling to remain operational due to remote working, due to the lockdown, due to pressures on child helpline counsellors. So our network is responding to those operational challenges in a variety of ways. I think as well, obviously, those children and young people that are already at risk and have mental health issues, those issues are being exacerbated by the lockdown. So it's those children and young people that already suffer from anxiety and other mental health and psychosocial issues that are really even at more risk. And in addition to those children and young people that are locked out of school or at home potentially with their abusers, for example, there are so many issues to consider here. I mentioned that child helplines are responding in a variety of ways, and this is primarily around moving to remote working, engaging in expansion of peer-to-peer support, in some cases expanding hours to cover more hours during the evening. And we're going to hear more about that from our colleagues in Zimbabwe and Greece to give examples. I also plan to show a video just now, but I think it's probably not necessary. It was just a very general introduction to the work of child helplines focused on mental health, but I think that it's something I can share in the chat and you can have a look at it at your leisure. So I think that's given a bit of an overview in terms of the way we are working. What I would also say is that Child Helpline International as an organization works primarily on supporting our members in terms of capacity building and scaling up, but also in advocacy, using the data that we collect from our members to support our advocacy messages. In terms of the pandemic, we're also working with the UNICEF headquarters and also the Alliance for Child Protection and Humanitarian Actions, and we have put together a technical note around child helplines, which will be released this week, which is aimed at agencies, governments, other actors who are wanting to support or even start child helpline services as a response mechanism to COVID-19. In that note, we have several recommendations for government, which again I can share through the chat so that you can see some of those, which I think could be very useful for us as we kind of put together our 2-pager at the end of today's session. So I think I'd like to move on and invite Reti from Zimbabwe. If you could jump in with some examples of how in Zimbabwe the Childline is responding to the mental health issues and the increasing contacts. So over to you, Reti, and then we'll follow up with you, Aggie. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you for organizing this meeting. I think mental health is an issue for children and young people everywhere, more so for us in Zimbabwe, where mental health is not looked at as an issue. It is it's looked at as weakness, and you would find that many people do not seek for assistance when they have mental health issues, despite the fact that not only the COVID pandemic, but also other emergencies that we're experiencing are making us more vulnerable and increasing the need for mental health psychosocial support. We are finding that children who have been sexually violated or young in their adulthood, they are still experiencing the same traumatic experience as if the event has happened yesterday. We're finding that some of our survivors are coming to talk about abuse that may have happened to them in childhood, and they're only talking about it in adulthood because there is a trigger that has happened then. We're also finding erratic behaviors in children. When you do look at it, you'll find that nobody provided the psychosocial support when it was needed, or nobody addressed their trauma when they experienced it. This is all just because our realization as a nation that psychosocial support is essential is quite low. There's been strides from last year in talking about mental health psychosocial support. And this is national guidelines are being developed so that we can also begin to talk about mental health as an important part in recovery. We have had a number of adolescent suicide in the last year, where previously we would record 2 suicides in one area in Bulawayo, our second capital city. In a month, we had 16 adolescent suicide. And it was coming from issues like bullying, issues like abuse and feeling unloved. Now with the COVID pandemic, we're also finding more and more children are calling us than before. We have experienced kind of a 43% increase in number of calls this last April compared to April 2019. And the calls are asking us a lot of questions about COVID. Young people are asking, how is this disease affecting their school? What will happen when schools open? Does it mean many more children will be affected or infected with the disease? There's a lot of the discussions are to do with how they are perceiving the pandemic and the information that they're accessing. And what's more, children access information from their schools, and those in tertiary institutions can access it from the internet. But what we're finding is most of the information on the internet is from other countries, and there's nothing much from Zimbabwe. So young people and children have to guess and have to make sense of information that is being shared on social media, which is sometimes very frightening, and it's raising high levels of anxiety in children and young people. Thank you.
Great. And I think just certainly to say it's so difficult to hear, particularly from child helplines, the increase. I know from talking to Nancy Lublin and others, helplines across the board, from those doing them in Philippines and Kenya to US, or we're all seeing that increase across the range of demographics. Okay, great. So, and thank you for all of you guys are doing. It's so important now. So, can I just, I think we're open now for questions. Actually, it might be nice as well if you're comfortable. We see where people are dialing in from, but if you just wanted to type in your name and your organization where you're dialing from, if you're uncomfortable, it'd be nice for everyone to know who's on the line. But we just wanted to open now for some questions to particularly the speakers we've heard from. If there's anything initially before we dive into a couple of specific questions around actions that can be taken moving forward. So any questions for Helen or Ratty or Aggie or myself on what we've heard so far? Reactions, questions, anything really.
Well, perhaps I can just jump in. It would be also great to hear from Aggie in Greece.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, of course. Sorry, Helen.
Sure, it's fine. So please, over to you, Aggie.
Okay. Well, I hope everyone here is safe, because we're struggling. All of the world is struggling right now with COVID-19. What I wanted to say is that the Smile of the Child remained fully operational during the lockdown. Because we operate 24/7, so we couldn't leave the children alone. So it was very hard for all of us coming here and doing things and help people, help children was our thought. But we are worried about ourselves. What if we get infected or our family gets infected? Anyway, now it seems we are like a little out of the woods, so we are hoping. So as you know, most of you, or maybe you don't, the rest of you, the Smile of the Child operates 3 lines for children, and we offer confidential help on a range of mental health issues. We're trying to help children and young persons to take control of the problems, talk about the problems, and promote at the same time their mental health. We do this by providing high quality information, or try to, and advice. We campaign enough. We are running an annual campaign about sexual abusement, and we call it Remains Secret, by trying to make people to talk about their sexual abusement and call and get help, and children, especially young people. Our lines are also referred to adults by providing information service and advice to parents or teachers who may be concerned about the mental health of or emotional well-being of a child or a young person. So I want to share our statistics for this April. Comparing to last April, we had a 96% increase of our calls. And of course, this is due to the lockdown. And we had a MOU with our Ministry of Health, and we provide our services through their line, through the Ministry of Health line. So if someone called the Ministry of Health line and wanted to talk about a child or the children, we came through. So that helped us for this increase. Okay, so this increase was more about family dynamics and family relationships that was altered. All the family at once was together. This increased abusement and increased anxiety in children and grief, and as well as social isolation. They weren't able to see their friends or talk to their close ones or go for a walk with their friends. So this was a challenge for us because we felt like we wasn't able to help them enough. So this, from one perspective, was our counselors on many occasions had to make referrals to public mental health institutions if the problems were serious enough. So most of the time, these came with a long waiting list for an appointment. Parents usually called us back and told us that we cannot wait 6 months. We have to do something right here and now. And especially in suburban and rural areas of Greece. And another challenge for us, it was that we had many cases that immediate action had to take place. For example, suicidal thoughts or attempts of suicide. Children called us and told us, I have taken pills, I'm in distress, I don't know what to do. So we had to act very quick. There was a procrastination time, along with the responsible. So it was a problem, and is to our Ministry of Health advocacy of what can be done. The challenge we dealt with is counselors with our responders, because we have our stress increased and distressed amongst of our personnel. And we worked under a large amount of stress for several hours or even days. And we see that we're about to having burnout symptoms alongside with all the negative consequences that correlated to vocational exhaustion. So we have to take care of ourselves too. So that was the challenges that we wanted to mention. I hope that it was some help to you. Thank you.
I think certainly supporting each other with all that I know so many of you are facing in responding to the demand and the pressures it puts on all of us. I know it's been a lot. So it's really important to acknowledge as well.
Yes.
So any questions from any of our speakers or reactions from what you've heard so far?
In many countries, the mental health is not even recognized as a health issues. Like any other health issues, it is not even recognized. So this is the right time we need to create, yes, mental health is far important like any other health issues. This is for the government as well as for the public. This, coming out to tell that we have a, some kind of depression, even the general thing. So that needs to be created, and this is the right time, I think, because this is for a long time it is not recognized by many government, because comparing with the other health issues, it is actually have the least importance.
Yeah, very important. And just wanted to highlight 3 things that I know of, that global initiatives that are really working on that in particular. One, it might be nice to hear from Emma from Time to Change Global, that's working global, the stigma campaigning in a couple of countries at the moment after their work in the US to bring that into light. We work on the Speak Your Mind campaign, which has brought together leading national advocates who've been working to get this on the government agenda across 20 countries so far, and they're actively leading on governments, as you heard on the video. They've come together with other leaders from around the world to release an open letter calling on governments with the backing of the Secretary General, as you've seen. So certainly would love you all to add your name to the open letter. But that's another campaign that is working on that already to support. And also, I think it's really important to note here, especially for this group, World Mental Health Day this year, it's in October, but we're currently working with the World Federation from others to work on what is the global campaign this year that will focus very strongly on access. That's the theme the World Federation of Mental Health has asked that campaign to do. So hoping for more unified day. So we have a number of existing initiatives to strengthen and build upon, as well as the new innovation that's happening there. Can I just ask though, Vishnu's asked a question here, and I might hand over to you, Sana, if possible, just to explain more about Catalyst 2030, because I think it's new for a few people on the group. And would you mind doing that? Because I'm also new to Catalyst 2030, or anyone really who wants to jump in after Susanna.
Well, this is a very important discussion among us. As already Navami, I don't know exactly her name, I think Navami, just explained that the mental health issue in every part of the world, I think, mainly in our region too, especially in our country also. It is not taken as high considerations, and they don't think that this is very important. The number is low. Perhaps that might be one of the reasons that the government also does not take care so much about this issue. Anyway, there are organizations, the human rights organizations also are taking care about it, even though it has not been so much, in a full scale worked in our country about the mental health issue. So I became very interested to hear from people of different parts of the world that how they are taking and caring about the people who are mentally, ill. So these issues should be taken into high considerations. And as a human rights activist of Nepal, I and with my friends are also just lobbying with the government to see about this issue during this pandemic also. Yes, with this discussion, and as this is being the proper time to have a collaborations among the people of different parts of the world to work on this issue. This is a very important issue, and I think in the future that we will also be one of the part of this issue. So, but at the same time, so what I'm just trying to know is, this Catalyst 2030 is a new organization for me. But I think this is the CEO, Frederick Gardner. I think I know him. He was in Integrity Action London before. He is also the founder, I think so, if he is the same person. So I would like to know a little bit about this, about this Catalyst 2030 organizations and its objectives. What is it doing now? How long it has been established, like that. Okay.
Our helper, would you mind giving that overview?
For sure. So let me quickly share my screen. It's great to see how much interest we have on this. So yeah, basically Catalyst 2030, it's a big group of social entrepreneurs. We're a big network that was initiated by Ashoka, Echo and Green, SWAP Foundation, and Skoll Foundation. And right now we have up to, we have up to almost 200 members included in our group. You are more than welcome to join us. I will be sharing in a second the membership.
Will it be in the individual basis? We can be a member in the individual basis or on the basis of organization? How is it?
You can do it individually. Most of the members that we have, actually, they join as their organization. If you are working already with one of the SDGs, basically it's to reinforce this. It's a big group of social entrepreneurs and different actors working together to achieve the 17 SDGs before 2030. So basically these SDGs, as you all may know, they have been established to be achieved by the UN in 2030, but according to the Social Progress Index, we won't be able to make this before 2094. So basically we are all working together to make this happen sooner.
Okay, thank you.
And how this will work in this conversation here, bringing together groups like this group, come up with a recommendations for moving forward, and that will be collaborated with other groups that are meeting this week from Catalyst 2030 to have one report on various actions. So that's really practically how this will work. Also, I do think it's worth mentioning other things that Catalyst 2030 and others can certainly be involved with in mental health specifically, and your interest around other mental health networks that are out there. One, World Mental Health Day, there'll be an official campaign for everybody. So we hope that everyone get involved with. The other thing just to mention is at United, we facilitate the Blueprint Group, which has over 700 global members of mental health specific advocates that work together on united advocacy across the year. We're actually also hosting a weekly webinar on latest up-to-date knowledge on mental health and COVID specifically that you're welcome to continue to engage with as well. But for the purpose here, so you can also join Catalyst here, just in the group. And the purpose here is, where do we see alignment around the actions that can be taken specifically through this community and others to ensure this need that we also agree on can be translated into support for people who need it. So any questions or reflections from anybody else on anything we've heard so far before we jump into, we'll do some short breakout groups actually. There's enough of us now that we'll probably break into 2 groups.
Hi, I have a question or comment. Sorry, I was a little bit late to the call. So I'm a CEO of a group called Corestone that works in India, Rwanda, Kenya, a little bit in the United States. We do resilience-based work. So our work is more around health promotion, mental health promotion, providing children, adolescents in particular, with skills and tools to use to build up their resilience and deal with life challenges and so on. So we're more of a health promotion, preventative type of an approach rather than let's say a diagnose and treat or a response group. We're looking right now at launching a fairly large size intervention that's really, excuse me, looking at what we would consider a second wave of mental health challenges that's going to come rather than the sort of immediate crisis support. So I am looking for, well-positioned NGO partners, community-based partners, or organizations that are well positioned with governments. We work quite a bit with the government in around 7 states in India in particular, as well as in Kenya. So I'm looking for organizations that are interested in more of the longer term response and sort of training and support that we want to provide to children. And there's a lot of questions for us about how we'll be able to do that. We traditionally work more in school-based programs. We have done community-based programs in slum areas, but we do the largest programs are in schools. So we're looking now at how to transition that to a hybrid model that includes schools, online, even though of course many of our populations are not online, TV, radio, and so on. So if there's any, potential organizations here who have those kinds of interests, please feel free to be in touch with us.
Great, thank you. On that note, in terms of those that are looking, this is a comment that's come through, how do you focus on the immediate needs and the long term? Certainly the recommendations, policy recommendations, we actually have to do both because responding quickly now should prevent some of that second wave. And actually it's important that we have quick and urgent response now, as well as building a stronger system back for the future that are quite clear. I was actually thinking, listening to the conversation here, I would like to propose we break into 2 groups, but would love just an indication of whether these are the right groups. There are 2, in terms of the government response and a kind of a whole of nation prioritization, investment, long-term, short-term, how we want governments to respond. I think one of my big questions is, what more can we be doing to translate, yes, we know that's important, into them actually doing it? And then another group around how do we support civil society, who honestly, hearing from a lot of you, are really filling a lot of the gaps at the moment and scaling and really having a lot of pressure and being able to respond to that increasing demand. So I wonder if we break into 2 groups of how do we move governments and another group on how do we best support civil society, whether that's through their connections with each other or scaling up resources. Do those, just a show of hands if you've been, oh, I actually can't see everybody, but for those we can see who'd be interested in the first group. I'm certainly on that one. So a couple, and then show of hands if you're interested in second group, which is more, how do we support civil society better, a network. Oh, great, we've got some hands. Okay, cool, we're pretty evenly split. So can we break into those groups? Group one, how do we move governments? And we'll give you, I think, 10 minutes, and then we'll have a very short report back from each group. So if you could nominate a report back person, that would be great.
Okay, perfect. So in that way, I will create right now the two groups, and then I will redirect each one of us to one of them. So.
Okay, great. And if you want to shift across, can you identify if you want to go to a different group? Like people choose.
In the meantime, so let me create this.
Thank you.
Government, we will have one. And the second one we'll have for civil society.
Great.
Perfect.
And we'll come back at 1:55 and have a short report back afterwards.
Perfect. So for the government session, who would like to be assigned to this one? If you could just tell me the name so I could assign you. Okay. Anything else?
Helen, Alicia, Navamani.
Navamani, yes. Helen.
Anyone else in government?
Yeah.
Yes.
Steve as well.
Steve. Yep. Vishnu, you said yes as well?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
And the rest will go to civil society. Is that okay? Someone else that wants it to be added to this one? Okay, perfect. So you'll be break up in a second.
Yeah, and might just encourage you to think about the short term and the long term, to Steve's point as well.
So now I will assign the rest to the civil society. Just give me 1 second. Perfect. Am I not missing anybody, right? Aaron Rosales and Raditsai? Okay. Good afternoon, Dana. Good afternoon, Dana. Can you hear me? Dana, welcome to this session. This is the roundtable in mental health. We have split the room into breakout rooms to have like more internal discussions. Please let me know if you can hear me so I can see where to assign you. Let me see. Okay, don't worry. Perfect. So basically, since you joined a little later, we are right now working two small groups. We have one more focused on government recommendations and the other one more for civil society. I don't know if you would like to maybe join one of those groups. We will actually finish the breakout rooms in 4 minutes and we'll come back all here and discuss. So 100% up to you if you want to join one of the two groups or you want to stay here until they come back and you listen to their inputs. Just let me know. Okay, perfect. So yeah, as I told you, in 3 minutes, everybody will come back and we will have like a discussion on all the internal two sessions that we had. So nice to have you. And yeah, since your microphone is not working, feel free to use the chat box if you have any question, and then we'll take it from there. And welcome again to the session. Okay, welcome back. In 7 seconds, the rest will join. Perfect. Okay, we're all here. Welcome back. Alicia, over to you.
I'm so sorry, I was muted. Welcome back. We had a hearty discussion, and thank you for all letting us go on slightly longer. We felt like it was worth more of a conversation. And so we have a few new people joining us. Hopefully you were able to join a group. Nice to see some faces as well that we didn't have on before. So what we'd like to do now is just have some short report backs from each group, and then we'll see where there's alignment and wrap up around how we can come up with recommendations moving forward, as well as our next steps and how we come back together. So starting with group 1, I think I was in this group, Helen was keen to lead the report back, is that right?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks so much, Alicia, and thanks to everybody in the group for your great contributions and a really good discussion. It was great to hear more about everybody's work in India, and Nepal, and from the US. So we, I think, came up with 2 worth reporting back items. That's not a good sentence, but I think we came up with 2 major points, and I think that I would summarize them that when we look at the implementation of the recommendations, because we're all interested in action rather than creating more recommendations, so we want to use the work that we've already done. We want to capitalize on existing structures, so we had a discussion about what is already working in terms of working with national governments and also working with regional bodies, and I think there's some good practices there that can be shared. And I think that the other major point was that there's a big opportunity for us to coalesce around World Mental Health Day, which is 10th of October, which has several advantages in the sense that it's got a run-up, so we have some time to prepare. It's already a day when we can do some really great advocacy work, although the theme is not yet announced, I understand. And also, as Steve and others have pointed out, it's also a kind of post-pandemic, hopefully a post-pandemic world. So we're looking at what will happen after the immediate crisis, and also looking at most likely schools returning, so back to school for the autumn semester as it is here. So there's a lot of mileage around how we might be able to use that opportunity. And I personally am excited about what we could do as networks. If we look at Catalyst 2030 as a huge and powerful network, combined with the network of Alicia's organization, which I think the Blueprint network is 750 organizations, and then Child Helpline International in 142 countries. Add to that Steve's network and everybody else here. I think that there's a really big, potentially a big group of people that could get behind some key messaging.
That's great. And from group 1, that's a really good summary of robust discussion from across the world. Any other points from group 1 to add in? Steve, can I just, would you mind mentioning your point around ministries that we might go to for effective advocacy?
Yeah, I was just making the point that in our experience, coming from a mental well-being perspective over the last, 10, 15 years, that we've made much greater inroads talking to the education ministries than actually to the health ministries. I think there's a number of reasons for that, but behind all of that, I think it's important to essentially tie mental health to other issues that governments tend to care about, other issues that are more easy for them to measure. Often mental health seems to remain this kind of amorphous type of vague type of thing, or it's like a Western concept. People within the government themselves may or may not be sensitized, adequately to why it's important. On the other hand, when you go to the education department and you explain how this is going to help to keep kids in school, or to the Ministry of, what's it called, culture and something in India that looks at vocational skills, for example. So when we, talk about how focusing on mental health is going to help their population, to get jobs, to retain their jobs, so on and so forth, then we seem to make much greater headroads. So in the education ministry now, we're working in thousands of schools, spending a couple of years talking to the health ministry. We basically got nowhere. So it's, I just think it's something to keep in mind, that mental health really, the message seems to go down best when you really couple it with other issues that people care about.
Yeah, really smart. Great. And now over to group 2, focusing on how to better support civil society in this time and for the future. Who's our report back?
Yeah, I am going to report back, I feel. I made some notes. I can summarize that our group is focusing through their work on especially raising awareness and using online platform for sharing informations, and also trying to end mental health stigma through stories. I really feel like there was like 2 main group I would highlight. This is really like one which through services, offering psychological support to child helplines, national child helplines can ensure professional counseling. And the other part of the group is trying to support civil society through digital products for civil society, including online learning materials, games, videos, using all the platforms. Shortly on this.
Any other, thank you so much. Any other additions from group 2? Very quiet group. The sun's coming into my face. No? It seems like we're all very agreed as to the things that need to happen to move this forward. See the diversity across the world as well. So I feel like we're making really good time, which is good. I know time is really precious for everyone at the moment. So in terms of sharing, we've shared those conversations with the group. I wonder if there's, if we could have some help from our helper just around agreement on the recommendations. So into a couple, can I just, a couple of buckets here. One, we started this conversation saying there are already policy recommendations and that we would recommend not revising those. Can I just check, maybe like a hand up or a thumb if you agree with that recommendation from this group? There may be a few kind of additions to that. So one I just wanted to flag from our group was, ensuring child helplines in particular, helplines more general, are considered an essential service. There may be some like more pointed ways of getting those recommendations across. So broadly, we would agree with what's out there and then try and bring a couple of those more kind of to the fore. Would hands up or kind of thumbs up if you agree with that, or anyone wish to disagree with that? No? Lots of thumbs up. I've only just discovered you can actually do a thumbs up. That's kind of cool. If you haven't discovered, you can press on reactions at the bottom and put your thumb up there. Okay, great. In terms of advocacy, and in terms of our next group, so I think there's an agreement that there needs to be more government advocacy to actually make sure these are put in place. We had the recommendations from the group that Helen shared, and a couple of really practical suggestions as well that we would encourage advocates to do, like not just focusing on health ministers, but also education. For Helen, your language was just for a united message, kind of, and using that. So again, is that something that we would have agreement on? Just speak up or speak out if you disagree with any of these. I'm just going to rattle through them. But I agree. Like, really that everybody can kind of join in on if they want to. And for civil society, actually, could I hand it? I don't want to misrepresent voice. What would be your core recommendations that we could put into overall group recommendations from your group? Just want to make sure I get them right.
Sorry, could you repeat it because you cut out? Well, I especially didn't hear it.
I don't know if it's mine that's breaking up.
Yeah, we keep losing you, Alicia. Just to maybe reiterate, so from the second group, the civil society recommendations, could you summarize the recommendations maybe into 2 bullets?
Sorry, I think I'm now.
We got it. I will definitely highlight, especially Natalia's comment of collecting data, which can provide a good guidance, what is needed. It's really important, safe and clear data collection. Mm-hmm. And also the use of a social platform to reach more. And the right platform. Sorry, I need to highlight that because it was under the discussion where we can reach and which platform is the best.
That's great, thank you. I think that's really sums it up nicely. And I just wanted to, before we kind of come to next steps here, we had those two breakout groups focusing on governments and civil society really. Are there any other recommendations of how to have these policy recommendations put in place for now or the future? One I wanted to pull out from our group that didn't fall specifically in those categories is also targeting funders in this way. So particularly funders who are interested maybe in education or other areas haven't done mental health, that we actually collectively would be encouraging them to address mental health within their area of concern as well. So there'd be a recommendation for us to do more of that directly and for funders themselves to do that. I can see a thumbs up from Helen. And any other recommendations as we've been going through the conversation today that you think should be proposed to include in some really actionable, practical recommendations? We seem to have consensus. Another minute? Oh, sorry, Emma said she's typed because she's struggling with the connection.
In our group, there was one great recommendation, or maybe it's already in practice. I don't come along that often yet. Aggie said that trying to help children to cope with the situation, and for this reason, they have online training on stress management for children. I find it really amazing, and for the future also, that could be something to think about how to develop it worldwide.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry for those that can't hear me. Can you hear me now? Sorry, it's so bad. Okay, I'm just looking to see, Emma had some recommendations typed in. I can't see them, but we'll follow up with Emma to make sure they're there. Or Emma, if you could retype them in, that would be great. Oh, you put them in the document, fabulous. So we'll pull them from there. And if there's nothing else, what I'd love to do now is ask if we could have a core group from this group that are happy to work together to write a kind of a summary of this conversation that can go into the Catalyst 2030 report, so that we can communicate with the wider community these things that are actionable, and hopefully it'll generate interest from others to join in and get involved, whether that's from implementing specific recommendations or joining us all on World Mental Health Day, for instance. Is there anyone, if you maybe could write your name, it might be the easiest, into the group chat if you're happy to join that group at the end of the session, and we need to have that summary together by June 17th. So I think what that would look like is agreeing to write it together. We could probably do some drafts offline, meeting once to get it finalized, and making sure that we submit it back to Catalyst 2030 by the 17th. So I'm just going to put mine in here. I'm happy to join the core group. Yeah?
Actually, it will be very
sorry.
useful if you could also type your name and your email, so we can also communicate directly to you, just in case, in the chat box, for the ones that are interested.
So I'm doing mine now. And there's no pressure. I know everyone's very busy, but if you'd like to join, please do put your name and email in there, and we can follow up separately.
Perfect. One additional thing, in the meantime, while people propose themselves, we will have an additional session for mental health in June. So I will create right now a poll. You will just have to select which option you think will be better. We have 2 dates. So I'll send it right now. You should be seeing right now the poll in your screen. So please vote.
How do you press on a button?
Right now we have four people that have voted. We're missing some.
I don't know if I don't understand how to do it, but I can't seem to vote.
Yeah, I don't know if we are able to, if we're co-host. I don't think we're able to vote.
Not able, yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so here we have the results. As you can see here, so the most voted option was June 17 at 3 p.m. So we'll come back to you later on with the invitation if this will be the final date. So thank you for participating.
Great.
Perfect. Okay. Well, at that, we can give you 5 minutes back of your time, which I know would be greatly appreciated for those of us on Zoom calls back to back all day. Thank you so much for joining. It's been a really rich conversation. And if you have any questions, do let us know. And we thank you for everyone who volunteered to be part of that group to bring that together, and look forward to working with you. And yeah, please keep in touch. I think supporting each other in the work that you're all doing is so important. So thank you to Catalyst 2030 for bringing us together.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Anything else?
Thanks very much for moderating, Alicia, and thanks so much for Aggie and Ratzi for your contributions as well. Great to see you.
Yeah, and to you, Helen.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. 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 Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.